High upon Mount Olympus, thunder splits the sky and lightning illuminates the heavens. From this throne of storms ruled Zeus, the king of the gods, the lord of sky and thunder, the figure whose name echoed across the ancient world. To the Greeks, he was the guardian of order, the punisher of oath-breakers, the protector of kings. Yet he was also a god of contradictions, wise yet wrathful, just yet unpredictable. A ruler of immense power whose passions often shaped the fate of gods and mortals alike. His myths tell of rebellion against his father Cronus, of battles against the Titans, of countless affairs that produced heroes and demigods. Temples rose in his honor, and the Olympic Games were celebrated as sacred to his name. But behind the thunderbolts and the legends lies a deeper question. Who was Zeus really? A divine figure of faith? A symbol of political power? Or a reflection of human desire for order in a chaotic world? Tonight, we uncover the story of Zeus, the king of the gods. Every story of a king begins with a struggle for survival. For Zeus, the king of the gods, that struggle began even before his birth. His father, Cronus, the mighty ruler of the Titans, had been warned by prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him. Terrified of losing power, Cronus devoured each child as they were born, swallowing them whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. One by one, the children disappeared into the darkness of his stomach. But when Rhea, his wife, gave birth to her sixth child, she could bear no more. With the help of her parents, Gaia and Uranus, she devised a desperate plan. She hid the newborn Zeus in a cave on the island of Crete, far from Cronus's gaze. In his place, she swaddled a stone and offered it to her husband. Cronus, blind with paranoia, swallowed the stone without question, never realizing his true son had escaped. In that hidden cave, beneath the sacred Mount Ida, Zeus was raised in secrecy. Some say he was nursed by the goat Amalthea, whose milk gave him strength. Others tell of the Curies, armored guardians who clashed their weapons together to drown out the infant's cries, ensuring Cronus would never hear. Still others describe nymphs who cared for him, surrounding the child with honey and ambrosia, the food of the gods. Zeus grew quickly, as myths often tell. From a helpless infant, he became a youth of extraordinary power, destined to challenge the tyrant who ruled the cosmos. When the time came, he returned in secret, armed with cunning as well as strength. With the help of Metis, a goddess of wisdom, Zeus tricked Cronus into drinking a potion that caused him to vomit up the children he had swallowed. One by one, his brothers and sisters emerged, alive, reborn, and ready for war. Thus began the Titanomachy, the great battle between the younger Olympian gods and the elder Titans. For 10 years, the war raged across heaven and earth. Lightning clashed against stone, and the very sky trembled. Zeus, wielding the thunderbolt gifted to him by the Cyclopes, became the driving force of the rebellion. Poseidon commanded the seas, Hades struck from the underworld, and their sisters stood by them. Together, the children of Cronus rose against their father's generation. The Olympians gained allies, the 100-handed Hecatoncheires and the one-eyed Cyclopes, who forged Zeus's lightning, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of invisibility. With these divine weapons, the tide turned. Cronus and the Titans were finally cast down, defeated, and imprisoned in Tartarus, the abyss beneath the earth, guarded forever by the Hecatoncheires. When the dust settled, Zeus stood triumphant. He had not only survived his father's wrath, but had fulfilled the prophecy that Cronus feared. From the darkness of the cave in Crete to the throne atop Mount Olympus, his journey was one of destiny. A child hidden, a warrior risen, a king born from rebellion. Yet his victory was more than personal. The Titanomachy marked the end of the age of chaos and the beginning of a new order. The cosmos was divided. Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. The earth itself was left to be shared, watched over by all. But above them all, It was Zeus who emerged as the supreme ruler, the one whose thunder signaled law, order, and divine authority. The origins of Zeus remind us of a truth that echoes through myth and history, that power is never freely given, it must be taken, often at great cost. His story begins not as a benevolent father of gods and men, but as a survivor, a warrior, and a usurper. The king of the gods was forged in struggle, and it is this struggle that defines the foundation of his rule. With the Titans defeated and the cosmos divided, Zeus stood at the summit of a new order. The sky was his dominion, boundless, infinite, and filled with the thunderclouds that signaled his power. From atop Mount Olympus, he reigned as king of the gods, a ruler not only by strength, but by the authority of law, oath, and cosmic order. His reign was marked first by symbols that defined his might. The thunderbolt forged by the Cyclopes became his weapon, a divine fire hurled from the heavens, feared by gods and mortals alike. The Aegis, a shield or breastplate imbued with terrible power, was said to bear the head of the Gorgon, striking terror into all who faced it. And his throne atop Olympus, surrounded by the other Olympians, established him as the arbiter of divine justice. Yet ruling Olympus was not simply a matter of thunder and fear. Zeus had to navigate a pantheon of powerful, often unruly gods. His brothers Poseidon and Hades were equals in strength, and his sisters Hera, Demeter, and Hestia commanded deep respect. To maintain harmony, Zeus cultivated authority through law. He was known as the protector of oaths and the enforcer of xenia, the sacred bond of hospitality between guest and host. To break such bonds was to invite his wrath, for Zeus saw in them the foundation of trust among gods and men. But Zeus was also pragmatic. He allowed the gods freedom, even dissent, so long as the cosmic order was not threatened. This balance of fear and leniency made his rule both respected and resented. Hera, his queen and sister, often defied him, especially when enraged by his infidelities. Poseidon challenged his authority on occasion, and even Athena, his wise daughter, could stand against him in council. Yet Zeus endured, his throne unshaken, his word final. The myths present Zeus as the guardian of justice, yet also as a god prone to anger. When mortals defied divine order, Zeus's punishments were swift and devastating. He sent floods to cleanse the world of hubris, as in the myth of Deucalion. He struck down those who broke sacred vows, unleashing thunder upon liars and oath-breakers. He punished arrogance, rebellion, and betrayal, not merely as acts against himself, but as crimes against the harmony of the cosmos. Still, Zeus was not only a punisher, he was also a protector. Sailors prayed to him for favorable winds, kings swore their legitimacy in his name, and warriors sought his blessing before battle. In every Greek city, Zeus had a title and a form: Zeus Xenios, the protector of strangers; Zeus Horkios, guardian of oaths; Zeus Polius, defender of the city. His presence was everywhere, shaping religion and daily life alike. The grandest tribute came at Olympia, where every 4 years athletes gathered to compete in games sacred to Zeus. Victors were crowned not merely for glory, but as offerings to the king of the gods. At Olympia also stood one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the colossal statue of Zeus, crafted by Phidias. Seated on a golden throne, with ivory skin and robes of gold, he gazed forward in serene majesty, embodying both power and benevolence. To gaze upon it, ancient travelers said, was to glimpse divinity itself. Zeus's rulership was thus multifaceted. He was the wielder of storms, the keeper of justice, the father of gods and men, and the central figure of Greek faith. His authority was not absolute tyranny, but a balance, harsh yet necessary, commanding yet protective. He embodied both the fear and the hope of a people who looked to the sky for answers. In ruling Olympus, Zeus defined more than a pantheon. He defined the idea of kingship itself, a ruler bound by destiny, armed with power, and responsible for the fragile balance of order in a chaotic world. His reign, immortalized in myth, reflected the very structure of Greek society, where law, loyalty, and authority held civilization together. And yet, beneath this image of the king of gods, there lay contradictions, passions, and flaws that would shape the myths to come. For Zeus was not only a ruler of law, but a god of desire, whose pursuits would blur the line between justice and impulse, order and chaos. No portrait of Zeus is complete without confronting his most infamous trait, his relentless desires. While he ruled Olympus with thunder and law, his passions often shaped the myths of heroes, mortals, and even the fate of entire kingdoms. For the Greeks, Zeus was not only the god of justice, but also the embodiment of raw vitality, his desires a force as unstoppable as the storms he commanded. Zeus's unions produced a pantheon within the pantheon. From his relationships came many of the greatest figures of Greek mythology: Perseus, the slayer of Medusa; Heracles, the greatest of heroes; Helen of Troy, whose beauty sparked a war that would shake the ancient world. Each story was more than scandal. It was mythic logic. Through Zeus, bloodlines of mortals were linked to the divine, giving rise to heroes destined to bridge heaven and earth. Yet the myths rarely softened his methods. He pursued women, mortal and divine, with cunning, force, or transformation. When he desired Europa, he transformed himself into a gentle white bull, lured her onto his back, and carried her across the sea to Crete, where she became the mother of Minos, legendary king of Crete. With Leda, Zeus came as a swan, descending from the heavens, and from their union came Helen of Troy and the Dioscuri twins. In the tale of Io, a mortal priestess, Zeus's pursuit turned her into a cow to hide her from Hera's jealous wrath, setting in motion a story of endless wandering. These myths reflected more than divine scandal. They revealed a god whose passions reshaped the world. Each union, each child born, was a thread in the vast tapestry of Greek myth. Heroes arose not by chance, but by divine design, their lives serving as instruments of destiny. The affairs of Zeus became the stories of cities, wars, and civilizations. But with these desires came conflict, especially with Hera, his queen. Hera's fury at his infidelities is one of the most consistent themes of Greek mythology. She punished Zeus's lovers and tormented their children. Heracles, most famously, forced to endure 12 impossible labors to atone for crimes driven by Hera's wrath. Their marriage, stormy and bitter, reflected the tension between divine authority and human morality. Even among the gods, the king's passions carried consequences. For the Greeks, these stories were not tales of morality in the modern sense. They did not judge Zeus as cruel or unjust for his affairs. Instead, they saw in his desires a reflection of cosmic creativity, the unstoppable force of life itself. Zeus's lightning could destroy, but it also fertilized the earth. His passions gave rise to heroes, demigods, and legends that connected mortals to the divine. Still, his myths carried warnings. They reminded mortals that to attract the attention of Zeus was both a blessing and a curse. To be chosen meant greatness, but also suffering. For in the shadow of divine desire, human lives were reshaped, often tragically, by forces beyond their control. In this way, Zeus embodied a dual role. He was the ruler who upheld law and order, yet he was also the chaotic force of passion, unpredictable and consuming. His myths blurred the line between justice and impulse, power and weakness. Ultimately, the stories of Zeus's desires reveal the paradox at the heart of his character. He was the king of the gods, supreme and untouchable, yet also subject to instincts and longings that bound him closer to humanity than perhaps any other Olympian. To the Greeks, this made Zeus not less divine but more real. A god whose power encompassed not only law and justice, but also the storm of passion that drives all existence. For all his thunderbolts and authority, Zeus's reign was not uncontested. To be king of gods was to be constantly tested by rivals, by allies, and even by his own children. Conflict was as much a part of his rule as law and justice, and through these struggles the myths reveal Zeus not as an untouchable monarch, but as a ruler forever balancing order and chaos. One of his greatest conflicts came not with a titan or a mortal, but with his own queen, Hera. Their marriage, stormy and filled with betrayal, was legendary. Hera's fury over Zeus's infidelities was relentless. She plotted against his lovers, cursed his children, and at times even conspired against Zeus himself. In one myth, she convinced other Olympians to chain Zeus while he slept, seeking to strip him of his authority. Yet Zeus broke free, restored his power, and punished the conspirators, reminding all that even within Olympus, rebellion carried a price. But Hera was not his only challenger. Prometheus, the trickster titan, defied Zeus by stealing fire from the gods and giving it to mankind. This act of defiance enraged Zeus, for it not only undermined his authority, but also granted mortals a divine power meant to remain beyond their reach. Zeus's punishment was brutal. Prometheus was chained to a rock, and each day an eagle tore at his liver, only for it to regrow by nightfall. The eternal torment symbolized Zeus's uncompromising stance. Those who defied the cosmic order would pay in perpetuity. The struggles extended beyond Olympus. After the Titanomachy, new threats arose. The Gigantomachy, a war between the Olympians and the giants born of the earth. The giants, immense and powerful, challenged Zeus's rule in a battle that shook the heavens. Yet Zeus, wielding his thunderbolts, led the Olympians to victory once more. With the help of Heracles, his mortal son, the giants were defeated, restoring order and proving Zeus's role as the defender of cosmic balance. Yet even Zeus could not silence all rebellion. In myths, he faced opposition from his own offspring. Athena, born from his head, often stood as his counselor but also challenged his decisions with her wisdom. Apollo and Artemis occasionally opposed him, and Ares, god of war, embodied the chaos that even Zeus struggled to restrain. These conflicts within the family of gods reflected a deeper truth. Power is never absolute, even for the king of Olympus. Zeus's wrath, however, was not only for gods and titans. Mortals too faced his judgment when they crossed the line. When King Lycaon mocked him and served human flesh at a feast, Zeus struck the palace with thunder and transformed Lycaon into a wolf, creating one of the earliest myths of werewolves. When the hubris of humanity grew too great, Zeus unleashed a great flood to cleanse the earth, sparing only Deucalion and Pyrrha, who repopulated the world. These stories warn mortals that Zeus's justice was swift, merciless, and divine. And yet, beneath the storms and punishments, there was always the same theme. Conflict was necessary to preserve order. Each rebellion, each act of defiance, each challenge tested Zeus's right to rule, and each victory reaffirmed it. Through conflict, Zeus became more than a ruler. He became a symbol of endurance. His throne was never safe, but his strength, cunning, and sheer willpower kept him unshaken. The myths of his conflicts tell us that leadership is not the absence of challenge, but the ability to overcome it, again and again. In Zeus's struggles, we see the paradox of divine kingship, immense authority, yet perpetual resistance. He was loved and feared, revered and opposed, a king whose crown was forged not in peace, but in constant battle. Zeus was more than a figure of myth. He was the beating heart of Greek religion and culture. His name was spoken in prayers, his image carved in stone, his presence invoked at festivals that united city-states otherwise divided by war. To the ancient Greeks, Zeus was not a distant god locked in legend. He was a living force woven into the fabric of daily life. Every city in Greece had its own form of Zeus. In Athens, he was worshipped as Zeus Polius, protector of the city. In Sparta, Zeus Lacedaemonios stood guard over warriors. In marketplaces, he was Zeus Agoraios, guardian of fair dealings. On journeys, travelers prayed to Zeus Xenios, protector of guests and strangers. His many epithets reflected the many roles he played: king, judge, father, and guide. No matter where one turned, Zeus was present. At the oracle of Dodona, among sacred oak trees, priests and priestesses interpreted Zeus's will from the rustling of leaves and the cries of doves. Pilgrims traveled from across Greece to hear his voice carried in the whispers of nature. This ancient sanctuary, older even than Delphi, marked Zeus not just as a sky god, but as a divine presence interwoven with the natural world. Perhaps the greatest expression of his worship came at Olympia. Every 4 years, athletes gathered from across the Greek world to compete in the Olympic Games, an event held not only for glory but as an offering to Zeus. Victors were crowned with olive wreaths, symbols of divine favor. At the heart of Olympia stood the colossal statue of Zeus, crafted by the sculptor Phidias, a wonder of the ancient world. Seated on a golden throne, draped in ivory and gold, Zeus's figure towered above worshippers, embodying majesty and serenity. To gaze upon it, ancient writers claimed, was to feel the presence of the god himself. These practices reveal Zeus's central role as a unifier of Greek identity. In a land of countless city-states, each with its own politics and rivalries, Zeus provided common ground. To swear by his name was to bind oneself to truth. To host the Olympic Games in his honor was to recognize a shared cultural and religious bond. Zeus was not merely the ruler of Olympus. He was the glue that held Greek civilization together. Beyond religion, Zeus shaped philosophy and literature. Poets like Homer and Hesiod wove him into their epics, not only as a character but as a symbol of divine justice and fate. Philosophers debated his role. Was Zeus the personification of natural law or a metaphor for reason guiding the cosmos? To Stoics, Zeus was Logos, the rational order of the universe. To playwrights, he was the unseen power behind tragedy and comedy alike. Art and architecture also bore his mark. Temples dedicated to Zeus stood across Greece and beyond, from Nemea to Pergamon. Coins carried his image, thunderbolt in hand, as a symbol of authority. His likeness was carved into reliefs, painted on pottery, and etched into the imagination of generations. Wherever Greek culture spread, from the coasts of Asia Minor to the colonies of Sicily, Zeus traveled with it, a god without borders. Yet perhaps his greatest cultural significance was not in temples or statues, but in the stories themselves. Through myths of power, passion, and conflict, Zeus embodied the complexities of human life: justice and injustice, order and chaos, wisdom and folly. To tell stories of Zeus was to reflect on human existence itself. For the Greeks, Zeus was not perfection but presence. He was the storm that nourished and destroyed, the ruler who commanded and faltered, the father who gave and withheld. In worshiping him, they acknowledge the duality of life, that power is both gift and burden, that justice is both aspiration and struggle. Through religion, culture, and story, Zeus became more than king of the gods. He became the eternal mirror of humanity's search for meaning, order, and connection to the divine. Zeus may have been born from the myths of ancient Greece, but his legacy did not die with the collapse of Olympus. Instead, his image traveled through time, reshaped and reinterpreted, leaving a mark on cultures far beyond the Aegean. To speak of Zeus is to speak of more than a god. It is to speak of an idea that has endured for millennia. When the Romans absorbed Greek mythology, they transformed Zeus into Jupiter, king of their own pantheon. Though the name changed, the essence remained: Lord of the sky, wielder of thunder, guardian of law. Roman emperors often invoked Jupiter's authority to legitimize their rule, presenting themselves as chosen by the king of the gods. Thus, Zeus's power extended from myth into politics, shaping the very foundations of empire. Even as Christianity rose and the old gods faded, Zeus's presence lingered. Medieval scholars studied ancient texts and saw in Zeus a symbol of natural order, a flawed echo of the Christian god. Artists of the Renaissance revived his image in sculpture and painting, celebrating the majesty of the human form through depictions of the thunder-bearing god. Writers and poets returned to his myths using Zeus as both inspiration and warning, a figure who embodied divine might but also human weakness. In the modern world, Zeus continues to thunder across culture. His likeness appears in literature, film, and popular media. From epic poems to Hollywood blockbusters, Zeus remains a shorthand for supreme authority, for power both creative and destructive. He is a character who bridges eras, reminding us that mythology is never truly past. It evolves, adapting to each generation's imagination. But beyond statues, books, and cinema, Zeus's legacy is philosophical. He represents the eternal human struggle to understand power, how it is gained, how it is wielded, and how it can be both just and unjust. In his myths, we see reflections of our own leaders, our own societies, our own struggles with authority and morality. Zeus is immortal not because he sits on Olympus, but because he continues to live in the questions we ask about the nature of rule. Reflection on Zeus also forces us to confront contradictions. He is a god of law who often broke boundaries, a guardian of justice who could be unjust, a king whose authority was absolute yet constantly tested. In this paradox lies his enduring relevance. For power itself is contradictory. It inspires awe and fear, it creates and destroys, it uplifts and oppresses. Zeus embodies these truths in their rawest form, and perhaps this is why his myth endures. Zeus is not perfection, he is complexity. He is the storm and the calm after. He is the ruler and the rebel. He is the god who reflects the human heart in all its strength and frailty. To study Zeus is not only to learn of ancient Greece, but to glimpse timeless truths about humanity itself. As we look back, from the mountains of Crete to the temples of Olympia, from the pages of Homer to the sculptures of Phidias, one truth becomes clear. Zeus was never just a god of the past. He is a mirror, a myth, and a metaphor, for power, for justice, for the eternal search for order in a chaotic world. And so the thunder of Zeus still echoes, not only across the ruins of Greece but within us, wherever we grapple with authority, question justice, or imagine the divine. The king of the gods remains, not on Olympus, but in the stories we tell, the symbols we carry, and the reflections we see in our own time. From the cave in Crete to the throne of Olympus, from the battles of Titans to the halls of Olympia, the story of Zeus is more than mythology. It is the story of power itself. A god of storms, a ruler of law, a figure of passion and contradiction. Zeus reflects both the greatness and the frailty of those who imagined him. Though his temples may have fallen and his worship faded, the thunder of Zeus still echoes. In our art, in our stories, in our questions about justice and authority. Subscribe to Arcane Atlas Legends to continue exploring the myths and legends that shaped our world, where gods, heroes, and ancient wonders still live.